Turning with propeller spins. Prerequisite is that you got your propeller spins down in both directions, counterclockwise and clockwise. It's a general principle for turning with any kind of moves on vertical planes that you need them in both directions, because as you turn, your perspective switches and thus the direction in which you're spinning switches. So make sure you can do your propeller spins in both directions. What also helps is if you have developed some plane control spinning on the opposite plane, so when you're in wheel plane, forwards and backwards, that you can keep some control of your plane if you're reaching across your body, if you cross over here on both sides with both hands, of course. And for your propeller spins, when you enter them, it sure helps if you can enter them from spinning inwards, so down your center line, up on the outside, and go into the propeller with both hands, of course, spinning inwards here, and also from spinning outwards, spinning up your center line, down on the outside, and you can go in the propeller from that side too, because for a full 360 turn you need both of them. And when you try to figure out on your own how to turn smoothly with any kind of moves when you're spinning it on a vertical plane, the main challenge is to find a way where you can switch between these directions or the sides, where you have to switch smoothly without any extra unnecessary beats, and that is what this tutorial is mainly about. When you're turning with a wall plane move like the propeller spin, a 360 turn consists of several parts. One is crossing forwards, one is crossing backwards, and then the last step is putting it together in a full 360 turn. And this, of course, in both directions. So that will be the three parts of this tutorial, and I'll start here with the crossing forward one. The crossing forward looks like this. Then you do a propeller here on either side, and you're crossing forwards. I'm spinning now towards the camera, down towards the camera, forwards towards the camera. And then this is how to cross forwards. You remember when you do a propeller, you have this back-to-back hand position, the backs of the hands facing each other. One hand is on top in the reverse grip, and the other hand at the bottom is in the forwards grip. And for crossing forwards, it is always the hand at the bottom and that grabs in the forwards grip that does the crossing movement. So when I'm starting here on this side, I've rearranged some plants in my house, so this is now peace lily here, the dragon shapes elsewhere. So I'm here starting on the peace lily side, and now it's the covered side hand that's here at the bottom and grabbing in the forwards grip. Then when this hand here grabs, spins up, then that's the point where the crossing starts. It will start spinning up and crossing here down to the other side. So it will always be from the opposite side to the home side where the crossing takes place. Once again here on this side. So it's this hand at the bottom in forwards grip, crossing over here. And the other hand, the peace layer side hand, that grabs here in the reverse grip and is at the top when I'm spinning, when I'm doing my propeller spin here. After the crossing, it crosses immediately over and cuts under here underneath the fiber bundle. That is how the hands switch their places. So I'm starting here, this hand at the bottom, this hand at the top. Then the hand at the bottom crosses over, the other cuts in immediately, and now it's the piece-lay side hand that is at the bottom, and the covered side hand is at the top. So I'm spinning here, facing the covered, I'm spinning clockwise, and when I'm facing the piece-lay, I'm spinning counterclockwise. And of course, the hand positions have to switch. Same thing for the other side. So I'm still spinning towards the camera. Now it's this hand at the bottom, grabbing a forwards grip, and when it's got its turn, it crosses over here, and there, this hand crosses over immediately, cuts in here, so that the fiber bundle hits it at the edge of the hand. So that's crossing here, and crossing here. To get used to this movement of crossing and cutting in there, you can skip the propellers for a second and just do this crossing movement. So you start on one side, so you start here on this side, spinning forwards, on the home side of the arm, the opposite hand cuts in when the fiber bundle comes down, the handle goes down, just cuts in here for on the back of the hand for the reverse grip, and when it swings around, crosses over to the other side. It's here, the other hand cuts in. Then you can do just this crossing movement for a while. When you're doing this, there are several points to focus on and to practice. One thing has to do with the general problem of keeping the fiber ends and the tail end out of the way when you're doing your propeller spins. For that, I'm not just spinning over here, especially I'm not keeping the fibers in the other hand here, because then you get tangled and oops, that was wrong. And the tail end gets in the way and you can't cross it under properly. So you have to do an extra twist of the wrist to get that tail end out of the way. So when I'm here, I'm not just spinning, but at the same time I'm doing a twisting motion to flip the tail end over. So here, flipping it's a bit related to this kind of movement, grabbing the fibers and you're turning the fiber end, the tail end around. So that's like to combine with this twisting motion. Oops. There we go. So that the fiber end just goes down on the outside and doesn't tangle here on the inside. Another thing is, you remember from the propeller spins in general that the upper hand needs to isolate. Depends on how much the bottom hand is working as well, but if your bottom hand is lazy, then the upper hand has to isolate more. And you can also do this isolating moment already in this crossing motion. I'm showing this from the side now so you can see it better. So instead of just letting the whip cut here on the edge of the hand, you can isolate over. So it's almost like you're spinning and you're turning your whip around that it's underneath the other hand in a horizontal line, more or less. So this twisting motion of the hand to flick the tail end over, and this isolating, these are the points how to keep the tail end out of the way. Showing this in the other direction. I switch direction now, spinning towards the piece slightly. So this is something you can practice to get clean and to get into your muscle memory. And the last thing that has to do with the general problems of doing clean 360 turns when you're spinning on vertical planes. because at the point where you're crossing, your planes, they have to be off. They have to be at an angle, because your planes are like train tracks on either side of you, and at the cross point, that is like a railway twitch or a railway point, and so the planes have to be at an angle there. And the trick is to regain clean planes as soon as possible. So when you're practicing here, you're crossing, then you probably have done more diagonal planes for the start, but really try to regain these planes as soon as possible. Oops, messing up here. So that you're really clean for the turn. You can also do it with a step, so that you're really going from wall plane to wall plane, and not only from wheel plane to wheel plane, but really try to regain your planes as soon as possible. One trick to regain the planes is to pick some focus points. So I got right in front of me at the cross point there's a camera, and behind the camera there's my windowsill, and there are flower pots, and I can use those as a target, so that I'm spinning here, I got that flower pot, and I'm painting a line on that pot, and then here I take the flower pot on that side of the camera, and then this is my target to get clean planes, whether I do step or just getting from wheel plane to wheel plane. When you got your crossing down, just this crossing movement, then is the last step to combine it again with a propeller spin. So that you do one full propeller, oops, messing up, one full propeller on either side. This was just crossing, there was no propeller in there, I just add one propeller on either side. And when you try that after you have your crossing down, you'll probably be standing there for a while and say, okay, this is my propeller, and now at what point do I do the crossing? And remember, it is the hand at the bottom that grabs in the forwards grip that does the crossing. So when you're doing a propeller, you just watch yourself, which hand is at the bottom, which hand does the forwards grip. You focus on that hand, and when this hand grabs, then you turn over to the other side. Then again, here you're in the other direction, propeller spin. Now it's the other hand at the bottom, and then you focus on that hand and say, oh, that's the one in the forwards grip, it's this one here, and then that's perhaps you do the crossing, and if it didn't talk so much, maybe it would be cleaner. So, like so. And for the start, you will probably need a couple of propeller spins to really focus and to get the feeling which hand it is. And step by step, you can reduce the number of propellers in between, so that in the end, spinning towards you now again. So that you get the crossing moment. The hand switch their positions. The hand underneath grabs now. Then the upper hand here grabs once, and as soon as the bottom hand grabs again, that's the point where it immediately does the crossing. Then cutting here underneath, grabbing once, the upper hand grabbing once, and the bottom hand touching again and immediately crossing. So it's this kind of rhythm: cross, grab, grab, 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 cross. If you got that rhythm, then you got the minimum amount of grabbings and propeller rounds that is possible The next to reduce again will be just the crossing. So it's just each hand grabbing once, and when the bottom hand grabs the second time, it crosses over again. You got that down, then you got your forwards crossing part for turning with the propeller spins. And in the next video, I'll show you the backwards crossing part.